Welcome to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today we have with us again Megan Connor. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Jane. Thanks for having me.
And Megan is starting a new project. She joins us with Tuesdays with Tim, and like I said, we've had her on the show before. Tell us about your new project just starting in January. Is it kind of a New Year's resolution type of a project?
No, not really. Although I did purposely start it in the new year just because I think it's a time for people to sort of examine their lives and see some things that they might want to change. I actually just did an episode on my channel about why New Year's resolutions don't work and what you should do instead. But this new project that I'm doing starts on January 7th. It's a live webinar, and it's going to be 8 modules across the course of 8 weeks. And it's about teaching people how to recognize manipulation and controlling behavior and how to learn the tools and the words that you need to defend against it in case you have someone manipulative in your life.
So it'll be like a step-by-step thing, or the new modules, do they add upon the prior module?
Yeah, so it's going to be, the beginning is going to be all about learning about manipulation and control, learning about the tactics that they use, learning about how these personality traits present in different types of relationships, and then taking a look at our own behaviors in conjunction with the manipulative person. How are we responding now? Why isn't that working for us? And then learning the tools that you need to use as a means of defending yourself and protecting your energy and making sure these people don't take advantage of you.
Right. So this would have probably its formation, not just last week you started talking about narcissism, but probably months and years ago. And maybe you can give us a little history of how you've interacted with maybe people that have narcissistic or have narcissistic traits, right? Because those are two different things as well we can talk about.
Right. Narcissism is on a spectrum, right? And all of us have some narcissistic traits or tendencies. We all have the tendency sometimes to be jealous or to be angry or to be controlling. We all have those things from time to time that come up. The difference between maybe someone who is a healthier individual and someone who has a personality disorder is that for us, when those traits come up, we may have the tendency to be jealous. We may act out in a jealous way, but we usually recognize pretty quickly that that's not how we want to act. It's not how we want to behave. We generally try to make amends for our behavior, and we generally try to make changes to do things different in the future. People who have a personality disorder aren't really capable of that kind of introspection. They're not really understanding how their behavior impacts other people, because one of the traits of narcissism is the lack of empathy, the inability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and say, well, how do I think that this is going to impact this other person if I do that? They just lack that ability to empathize with someone. And they also lack self-awareness. So they think that the way that they're doing life is the right way to do it. They think everyone else is doing it wrong. And they don't really see a problem with their behavior. They see other people's reactions as problematic. They think that's the wrong way to react to this. I'm doing everything right. I don't understand why they're reacting that way. They're the ones who need to change. And if you ever do get a narcissistic person into therapy, which is a pretty rare thing, usually they're compelled to go by a partner or something else, a court-mandated program. Generally speaking, they'll get into therapy and then they'll think that the therapist is just getting it wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. So it's pretty difficult for a person with a lot of narcissistic traits to ever change and heal. So just to give some background, I grew up in a narcissistic family system. I was in a 22-year marriage with someone who was very manipulative and controlling. And about 10 years ago, I sort of woke up from my dissociation from all of that abuse and decided to go to therapy and get help myself. So I've spent the last 10 years, not just in therapy, but really studying personality disorders, studying narcissism, studying institutional narcissism, how these traits show up in the workplace, in businesses, in other organizations, and also studying philosophy and religion and human behavior, healing modalities, and going through my own healing from all of this abuse. So I've spent a really long time reading and researching these things, and I've helped people all along the way with these types of relationships. But it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I started professionally coaching people not only with relationships, but also on starting businesses and things like that. So what I've seen, though, through the past 5 years is that a lot of my clients are dealing with someone like this in their life or their workplace in some capacity. And not only that, but Lori Vallow Daybell is my first cousin. And in talking about her case and her convictions, I talk a lot about her personality traits and how those personality traits and the family system that we grew up in contributed to what happened to her and what she did. And so I'm in sort of this unique position where I'm not a licensed mental health professional, but I have so much experience in dealing with these relationships. I've been able to help a lot of people to relate to manipulative and controlling people better and to sort of wrest their lives away from people who are trying to control them.
And I suppose that before you gave yourself permission to seek help, you probably thought, oh, that person's right. If I was just better, then things would be better. And you would call blame reversal a lot of times, right? Is how they throw it back in your face. And you experienced that as well?
Yeah, I would find myself in conversations with my former spouse all the time where I knew that he had done something that was not healthy. It was not good for our relationship. And so I would spend a lot of time before a conversation scripting out what I was going to say. And then I would get into the conversation. And before I knew it, he had turned it around on me, made it my fault. And I found myself as an empath saying, well, maybe I did do something wrong. Maybe I should have handled it differently. Maybe he's right about XYZ thing that he's accusing me of. And I would leave those conversations feeling completely bewildered. I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but now I know that's a tactic. It's called Darvo, where they're going to deny that they've done anything wrong. They're going to attack you for accusing them. And then they're going to reverse victim and offender. So now instead of being the offender, now they're going to play the victim and they're going to say, how dare you call me out on that? You know how sensitive I am about this. You must be a monster. Do you not care about my feelings at all? And me as an empath hearing that would go, I'm so sorry. You're right. I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe I should do something differently. Maybe I'm the one who needs to change. And we would just go around and around in these circles over and over and over. And I finally was able, through therapy and research and reading, I was finally able to recognize the cycles that kept happening over and over. And I finally found the strength to say, that's it. I'm not doing this cycle again. We've been around this tree before. I know this story. I'm not going to do it again. And it was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, being a Mormon and believing you should just work everything out. But I stayed in my relationship, in my marriage for about 10 years after I knew what kind of a person he was, because I felt compelled to work it out. So if I had had some of these tools and things that I'm going to teach in this webinar, then my life would have been a lot more peaceful. I probably would have had the strength to choose myself sooner. And I think my life would have been better off. So I'm just trying to help people not waste years of their lives and not waste all of their time and energy on these types of relationships.
That's right. And I kind of have a lighthearted example. If you go back in time, you'd watch Back to the Future. Biff, when he has borrowed the car from Marty McFly's dad, the car comes home in a tow truck.
Yep.
And he blames the dad, for having a car that had a blind spot.
Exactly.
And he says, how do you think that makes me feel, or however he says it. So that's a perfect example of a narcissist and a bully. And
yes.
that has something to do with the name of your series, right?
Yeah. So I think that the word narcissist and the concept of narcissism, it gets a little bit overused in the wrong situations. And I think a lot of people don't really understand it properly. I think it's important to call things what they are, but because narcissism kind of just gets tossed around so much, I think I want to teach people some new vocabulary and maybe some different ways of referring to this. Because if you are, for example, getting a divorce and you go into court and call your former spouse a narcissist, the judge is immediately going to rule you the problem, because that term just gets thrown around so much. So really, when we think about the traits of someone who is narcissistic, it's that need for validation. It's the need to be the center of attention. It's that need to have control of the conversation. There are all of these traits that are associated with narcissism. It's really just the same thing as the typical grade school, middle school bully, somebody who's deeply insecure. And as a result of that insecurity, they start acting like the biggest person in the room. And they start putting other people down and shaming people and stealing people's lunch money just as a means of feeling powerful. This modern day, narcissism is the equivalent of like out in the adult world, stealing people's lunch money, just taking their power away from them, making them feel small, making them feel like they're the problem. And so I think by calling it bullying, because that's really what it is, it devalues the narcissist, and it also paints a really specific picture in our mind. We all know what a bully looks like, what they talk like, the kind of behaviors they have, and it can be related to narcissism. And the other thing that I think is important is, like I was saying, narcissism is on a spectrum, and we all have traits and tendencies that could be described as narcissistic. But the difference is the person who's the bully, actually that becomes their whole personality, and it's the way that they act in public all the time.
I suppose since narcissism is like a clinical term, and unless you have a degree in psychology, the judge is going to consider you speaking out of line, right, by saying narcissist. But bully is something we know it exists ever since first grade. And so that is totally understandable and totally within the realm. It's not a technical term. It's just something everybody's experienced probably at some point.
And the other thing is that judges in family court probably hear this all the time. My spouse is a narcissist. Well, it's problematic because a lot of times what ends up happening is that the aggressor in the case is really the narcissist, but they're accusing the other person of being a narcissist. And so the judges hear that kind of talk and they're like, I'm not here to sort out who has a personality disorder or not. But it really is abusive. And we're trying to get judges, family courts, lawyers, attorneys more educated about that disorder so that they can have better words to use in court. And it's, for example, if I say to somebody, well, my spouse bullied me into staying home all of the time, people understand that a lot better than saying, my spouse exhibited coercive control behaviors over me. A lot of people are like, I'm not really sure what that means. But if I say he bullied me into staying home, you know exactly what that looks like. He made me feel bad about leaving. And so I ended up staying home instead.
Right. Being able to break things down into the non-technical terms helps everybody relate to it better.
Yeah.
And so as you start, what are we going to look for the first day that you open up your webinar? What's going to happen? How do people sign up? And we'll have a link in the description.
Well, I sent the link to you, so you can just go click on that link, register for the webinar. You're not committing to anything when you register for it. It just takes your email, and then you'll get a welcome email from me. And then I will send you an invoice. And for Jean's listeners only, I'll tell you the discount code so you can get 50% off of the course, because I really believe this material is so valuable because it's going to give you back your most valuable commodity, which is your time. We spend so much time and energy being drained from us when we have somebody like this in our lives, that having the tools to work with that person takes back that time and takes back that energy. I don't know if you can relate to this, Jean, but whenever I've had a coworker that is sort of narcissistic or who is problematic or manipulative, I spend so much time talking to other people about the experience because I want to know, is it me that's the crazy one, right? So I'll tell my sister, my girlfriends, whatever, about this coworker and say, do you think this is weird? Is it just me? And then we'll spend a lot of time talking about the situation. They'll give me suggestions. Then I'll go bounce it off maybe my significant other or something. So we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to deal with these things. So the first thing that we're going to do in the webinar, and the webinar is going to be live, but if you miss the live one, the course material will be available to you forever. So you can go back and rewatch videos. And even if you join after the first module, you'll be able to go back and rewatch the other ones. But the people who are live are going to have an opportunity to get their questions answered in real time. So after I present the material, we'll have a Q&A session afterwards with really specific examples tailored to people's individual situations. But the first thing that we're going to do is learn about the tactics of manipulation and control, things that people say to us or do that we go, that was weird. I wonder why they did that. Well, it's because they're trying to manipulate you. So we learn about what the tactics are and how they show up in regular daily life. And then the last little bit of that first day is going to be sort of like triage. Like if you're in this kind of relationship right now and you need something right now today that you can say to this person next time you talk to them, here are some techniques that you can use. So they're going to leave the course that first day really understanding a lot more about what manipulation and control looks like, and having some real tried and true responses that they can use the very next time that they talk to that person.
That's right. You kind of go by the try it before you buy it model a lot in your services. So I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, for sure. And also I give a lot of this content away for free on my channel. Every time I talk about manipulation and control, I give tips and techniques. It's just you have to look a little harder to find it, but the content is there. It doesn't matter what subject I'm talking about. I'm always talking about how to do these things for free on my channel. So if for whatever reason you're in a spot where you can't afford the webinar right now, which I completely understand, you can get so much of this information just for free on my channel.
That's right. Either 400 hours of Megan's content or boil it all down at how long do you think each session is going to be about?
Well, the material I'm going to present is going to be anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes, depending on the module. And then we'll have Q&A afterwards. So I'm shooting for each module to last between an hour and a half.
And you'll probably provide references and things that they can go do deeper research into, and other resources that they can get.
Yeah, lots of references, lots of resources. And in addition, the ability to, in real time, the people who are attending the course live are going to be able to email me with their questions and things they have in between. So if there's something I didn't present clearly the first time, then during the next session, I can address it again and sort of redefine and refine it for people.
That sounds really good. I know that, and we were raised Mormon, and I know there was polygamy way back in my ancestry somewhere, and was the same thing for you. And so there are some narcissistic traits just from that institution, I'm betting. Can you describe any of those?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm developing an episode that I hope to share very soon about institutional narcissism and the way that the church operates in society as a narcissist. And in addition to that, I'm getting ready to interview somebody in the next couple of days that I've had a really interesting back and forth with. He came out of the church and very quickly realized that the church is a breeding ground for narcissism. And he is trying to help other men coming out of the church recognize how damaging patriarchy is to the way that men relate with each other and relate with other people in their lives. And so he's calling out the narcissism inherent in patriarchy and trying to help other people recognize it and heal from it too. So that's going to be an awesome interview. I'm really looking forward to it.
So is even saying, honey, where are my keys? Is that narcissistic tendency?
No, not at all. You're asking for help from someone. I think where the narcissism comes in is if you were to say something like, I know you have my keys. I know that you know where they are. You better tell me right now.
You lost my keys.
Right. Right. Why are you always moving my keys? I put them in the same place every single time, but you're the one who moves them.
Then if it turns out that it was where I made the mistake, then I'm going to say, oh, well, I only made this mistake because you did something else that caused me to mess up where I normally put my key.
Yeah. See, this is how I can tell you're not a narcissist, because you don't readily just have the words right there. But it would look like somebody in this situation saying, well, look, my keys have been here the whole time. If you hadn't distracted me, then I would have known that in the first place, and we wouldn't have wasted all this time looking for them.
I will say that at some points in my marriage that I could tell some of that was coming out, because nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to, do the wrong thing. People would like to have, excuses for everything. And that's almost, the blame reversal that the church does is like they are using the excuse of why the priesthood didn't work, or why you're not getting blessings, or something like that.
Yeah. And I can actually narrow it down to one very simple thing. because like I said, we all have these tendencies sometimes. We all mess up. We all handle things incorrectly. We all get defensive. It's hard for us to admit when we're wrong. The one thing that separates people with narcissistic personality disorder or a consistent display of narcissistic traits is that they can never accept responsibility personally for what has gone wrong. They will always deflect the blame to someone else. And I don't like to use absolutes, but in narcissism, their world is very black and white. And in their world, it is an absolute of either always or never. If they are able to accept responsibility at all for something that they've done that's wrong, there's hope for that person. So I would say that the likelihood that someone's going to heal from these types of traits or be able to change in the future is directly proportional to how often that they're able to accept personal responsibility for something that they did that was wrong, or even something that went wrong that they were involved in, because the extreme narcissist will always blame it on someone else.
Now, some people can't commit to the same time every week or whatever. So if they do sign up, they'll have access to the recording or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Once somebody pays for the registration, then they receive the link that is good forever, that they're always going to have access to that material.
Okay. And they don't have to become a member of your channel or anything, or are you going to incorporate that? Or
no, I mean, I do post a lot of members only content where I do talk about some of the things that I'm developing and working on. And I do give some insider background info for my channel members. But taking part in the course, you don't have to be a subscriber or a channel member or anything. You just have to register for the course.
And as part of this, I'm going to include like how to treat your children so that they can become more aware of these types of things and not have narcissistic traits.
Yeah, there's going to be a parenting portion of one of the modules where we talk about how narcissism shows up as a parent and how to deal with it if you're a child of narcissistic parents. And also, yes, prevention, how to teach our children to recognize these type of behaviors and how to help them learn how to deal with it as well.
And I know that there's a trend. I don't know. I think even the church put out something about young people are like disowning their parents. They're separating from their parents. And I never read the article or anything, but I know of people who are blocking parents for different things. But prior to that, they set boundaries. They try to have discussions. And a lot of times they just wanted to be treated like an equal adult. Like it's adult children. I'm not talking about 12-year-olds disowning.
Right, adult children.
Are we seeing that tendency where adult children these days are like more aware of sort of these tendencies? They're seeing it more in culture. They're empowering themselves more. And that is part even of why maybe as we see people are leaving institutions that have narcissistic tendencies, it seems.
Yeah, I think the younger generation, my older kids are Gen Z, my older kids are millennials, my younger kids are Gen Z. I think that these coming up generations have a lot more access to quality mental health care. There's a lot more information available for free online about personality disorders and handling troubling people in your life. So I think the younger generation is more aware of how to relate to people in healthy ways. And a lot of people in that generation had parents who did the sort of my way or the highway parenting. Some of them came by it really honestly. And in my case, I think my parents did the best they could with the information that they had, but a lot of it was still really problematic. So in my case, I did distance myself from my parents for quite a while. And I started gradually reintegrating them into my life just in ways that I felt were healthy. And now I just have some really good boundaries, and I have time limits on how much time that I spend with them and how much I interact with them. A lot of people choose to go no contact and they think that it's going to be forever. But this is one of the things that we're going to talk about in these modules is, do you go no contact? Do you cut people off completely? How to do that in a healthy way? How to decide what to do before that? walking people through this sort of idea of having less contact with people like this in their lives, because there's definitely a healthy way to do it. There are some unhealthy ways to do it. And I've learned a lot through my personal journey of distancing myself from family members, and good ways to do it, bad ways to do it, healthy, unhealthy. I came across an account on TikTok a few days ago, maybe a week or so ago, of this woman who calls herself Doormat Mom. And she has written an entire book called Doormat Mom No More. She has a Facebook group, and she talks on TikTok about being estranged from her adult children. And what I find to be really interesting and also sad is that it seems like she would rather complain about her ungrateful children than do the work that it takes to have a relationship with them. So I can speak as a parent who was estranged from one of my adult children for a time by their choice, not by mine. I know how much that hurts. I know how hard that is for a parent, but you kind of have two choices. You can either give them the space that they're asking for and try to understand their perspective, or you can go start complaining about it to everybody and talk about how ungrateful they are and then never have a relationship with them again. There's not really, you can't have it both ways in that situation. So I have compassion for parents who have been estranged through someone else's choice, but I also can come from the perspective of a child who did distance myself from my parents for quite a while, many years. So I understand those relationships. I understand both sides of it. I've been on both sides of it, and I kind of figured out what to do and what not to do. And I think it's a conversation that is important to have, because I don't believe in cancel culture, but I do believe in really strong, healthy boundaries. And I think it depends on the individual situation, how much contact you do have. And I think sometimes no contact is healthy for a time, but I think the goal should always be to reintegrate in some way, whatever that way looks like. And my reintegration took several years. It started with just a phone call here and there when it was necessary. I still don't really do birthday and holiday greetings for my parents, for example, but I did just have dinner with them the other night with my kids. So there's a way to do it in healthy ways, and there's a way to navigate those relationships without continuing to do yourself emotional harm.
So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even though for some people it's brighter and some people it's dimmer. But,
I used to say, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It might be a train, but we're going to find out.
That's right. It's either an opening or a train. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, train wreck soon to be. Right. But you gotta have a way to try it, right?
Yeah, you got to try some things out. And I did so much trial and error. There were so many things that I did, that now that I look back on it, I'm like, well, that wasn't the right way to handle that. I should have done it differently. Now I have sort of a variety of tools to use that I can help other people so they don't make some of the same mistakes that I did.
That's right. And so it's 1 week after New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve, actually. So it's Tuesday,
Yep.
the 7th.
A week.
And
a week from today.
A week from today, we're recording on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, is there anything else you want to say about it, or did we cover it pretty well?
I think we covered it pretty well. I just want people to feel comfortable with the idea of, the live webinar. You don't have to have your camera on. You don't have to have your name on the screen. You don't have to, nobody has to know that you're there. It's going to be mostly me on the screen. People are welcome to share and comment if they want to. You certainly don't have to. But what I also like is the idea that you can access that material later, because the reason I have a week in between the modules is because it's a lot of information to absorb. These are big changes to make, and it takes people time. So it's not only a week between modules, but then you can also come back and watch them later. If you're like, okay, I've been doing okay, but I remember this one thing that she said, but I can't remember exactly. You go back and watch it. You don't have to take copious notes. You can just absorb and come back to it later. So I hope that it's going to be a good pace for people to incorporate some healthy changes and then just have lots of tools at their disposal when they need them.
There you go. Well, thanks, Megan, for all the work that you do. And also they can catch you on Third Verse or?
So my YouTube channel is at @third_verse. That's where I am on Instagram and TikTok as well. And then you can also just look up the Midlife Revolution or look up my name. My YouTube channel will come up, and my podcast is available everywhere you get podcasts, the Midlife Revolution.
I probably have a hard time thinking about the midlife when I still am just a young pup, right? I still want to avoid any mention of midlife crisis or anything. Yeah, so it's been great to know you, and I'm sure a lot of people will get some help from that. And we're, like you say, we're going to have in the description the link and also a code for 50% off. And I encourage everybody, because it's not just for people that are in direct narcissistic relationships, but tertiary, right? There could be a friend of a friend. You can give people some help. You can point people in Megan's direction. It's a good way to start the year. So a way to be a little bit more healthy, right, through the year.
Yeah.
And so thanks a lot for coming on the show, and good luck with everything this year. 2025. Remember when we were kids, 2025 was like the name of some futuristic show that was either going to be the earth had been bombed over,
right,
or something like that, or religiously Jesus would have already come by now, and we'd be in the millennium, and we'd be all working towards, whatever goals we would have for that. But the life as we knew it was not going to happen, and yet it's still here. We're still happening. Here. We still have problems to deal with.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know if fast food is any better after.
I don't know. I think it's worse, but
yeah, certain things are good, certain things are bad. But we're living life. We're trying to get better. Hopefully 2025 sees everyone try to get a little bit better. Right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gene.